when I started taking care of myself, I found a different voice that was easier and more enriching and ultimately funnier because it was coming from a place of, oh, I love this and I love myself. And if as long as I'm doing this for myself, I'm great. And that came from taking care of my body, taking care of my mind, really looking in the mirror and being able to examine my life and saying, similar to you, I've got littles who are looking at me, and a 10-year-old who is modeling things that they're seeing with me. And I need to examine, we're in the middle of the pandemic and I can see they are anxious because I'm anxious. What can I be doing to take care of myself? What can I be doing to show them? And saying, well, if I'm putting it all on them, I need to really do this for myself.
Yeah.
I need to take care of myself.
Jokes in the gym. Jokes in the gym. Not jokes in the gym. Jokes in the gym. Jokes in the gym. With Rudy Tyburczy.
What's up, everybody? It's your boy Rudy Tyburczy here, coming at you right in your ear holes. At least I hope I am. I just recorded an intro and the mic wasn't turned on, so hopefully it is this time. I just wanted to say a little intro about my conversation with today's guest, Kellen freaking Terrett. Kellen is one of my dearest friends. We go way back. We met in college. We get into some of them deets about it, and it's so fun to take a little stroll down memory lane with someone in your life that is so friendly and warm and supportive and caring and nurturing and such a fun guy. We've known each other for decades, literally, and he's just one of the funniest and most talented comedians I have ever met. He was a huge influence in my life. He's such a great performer on stage. He acts. He's an improviser. He's a writer. He's a comedian. He does so much stuff, and he's a dad. And anytime that we hang out or talk, even if we haven't talked in a year or whatever, we're just so easily able to drop in, and I'm so thankful for my friendship with Kellen and others like that as well. That's important to me, and because we're all leading busy lives. We're all doing so much. And lately, as I've come across a lot of challenges in my life, it's so wonderful to have these warm, connective conversations with friends like Kellen, who are really supportive and really want to lift their friends up. I'm so thankful for him and for other friends like that in my life as well. And so I'm super stoked that you get to listen in on a conversation that we had, and we hadn't talked in months in a while, and just are so readily able to connect and I think really get deep into stuff because we both love comedy, we both want to be healthy, we both live vivaciously. I don't know if Kellen and I have ever been described as vivacious livers, but I think we are, and I'm excited that I get to share that we get to share that with you, dear listener, Mike. And I hope that you have half as much fun listening to this podcast as I did, because it was so fun to record and super fun to play and be silly and be thoughtful and be supportive and be friends and hopefully provide a little value and riff with one of the best improvisers I've ever known. And one of the most talented guys I know. And I'm so glad that he's going to grace you and your ear holes a little bit. So enjoy our friendly convo, our fun convo. And I thank you for stopping by today. Here's me and Kellen Terrett.
Jokes in the gym. Jokes in the gym. With Rudy Tyburczy.
Type bodies, no mullet, right? Doesn't work.
You can't do a mullet.
Can't do a mullet.
I think anyone can do a mullet.
You think so?
I think we can all do mullets. Did you grow up with a mullet? Be honest.
So my problem is my hair is so curly and wavy. I wanted a mullet really bad, but the back of my head, it would start to curl, and I had like this awful curly rat tail.
Oh, fun.
It would look like a mullet if my hair was wet, but the moment my hair would dry, it would curl up and I had like a top bun at the back of my head. It
That's
did not
very
look
cool.
good. It did not look good.
Everyone likes the top bun.
On the back, in the back bottom of your head, though, it was very strange. There is a photo of me and my family. I think it's before I moved to Oregon. We went to some, like, we did one of those like Old West photos.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm dressed as a Union soldier.
Of course.
And I've got this awful rat tail mullet, and it looks really good.
Yeah.
And it's the only photo I have where I'm like, that's how it's supposed to look. That's the vibe I needed. Did I have the energy to wear that mullet? No. Did I have the riz, as the kids say? No. But it worked for me.
You got it. You had it for that moment. There was one shining moment where you mulleted appropriately.
Thank you for bringing up March Madness in one shining moment. I really appreciate that.
I didn't even think March Madness. You're such a hoops head that you went straight there.
Went straight there. Are we talking about hoops today? What are we talking about today? You want to talk about the Bucks? You want to, or is that still too raw for
I'm fine.
For you?
I mean, I'm happy they just fired their coach. That they kicked my old ex-head coach out of town a while ago. So I'm fine with them Bucks right now.
Very fine with that. Yeah.
Yeah. No, my team stinks, and I'm okay with that. It's just life. It's part of being a sports fan. It's watching teams that suck.
Oh, it's the best. Watching a team that could be great suck, to me, is one of the best parts about watching sports. I love it.
I think I'm gonna because I've changed how I fan lately. I've changed the type of fan that I am. I used to like jump on couches and like I was Tom Cruise during the NBA playoffs. I was gnarly. It was yelly. It was loud. I was hitting cushions. It was bad. And now I don't care. My Eagles won the Super Bowl a couple years ago, so I figure everything on top of that is totally gravy. I just get to be a sports fan now. I got one chip, and that was enough. It
is funny that way. It's like if a team you watch wins it, there is something like, all right, we won. And even if you don't ever win again, there is something really enjoyable about that one win to say, okay, that was enough for me.
Absolutely.
That was enough.
That's what every athlete is trying to do their entire lives. Yeah. And so you get it once. I feel like that's like ice cream forever.
Ice cream forever.
That should be a shirt. It has a Super Bowl championship. Forever. Ice cream forever. No, I want to make a shirt that says sports, not invested in the outcome.
Ugh.
Because that's when sports is fun. Yeah. Is when you're not. It's not when it's. You know what? I will be honest. I went to the Blazers playoff game. 20,000 screaming fans together in the same room. It's a biblical experience.
Oh yeah,
it is intense, and you feel so connected.
Yeah, like there is something different about live sports versus watching it on TV. Yeah. I'm such an old man. I like listening to baseball on the radio. Like I pay MLB TV for the radio aspect of it because that's where I'm at in my life. I'm like, I don't have time to watch a baseball game, but I'll listen to a baseball game while I'm doing other things. I love it.
But horrible.
Going to a sports event live, even if it's a team you don't enjoy, there's something special about it. I'm very excited for neither of my children will play sports. This is my DNA I'm passing on. They're not going to play sports. But the idea of going to a high school football or basketball game, the idea of going to a local sporting event, even if the team is terrible. I'm living in Chicago. There's lots of terrible teams. I love going and watching Chicago teams lose. It's the best.
It's so great. I found myself in a high school gymnasium recently watching my friend's daughter play her first high school volleyball game, and it was magical. I loved being back in that gymnasium, brand new high school, and it was just super cool being out there with parents and like looking at everyone in their cargo shorts and whatever. Just purely parenting, just all parents
all the time.
Yeah, it was fun though. I had a great time, and as much as people want to talk about professional sporting teams, that's what everyone wants to talk about. This is high on the list. This is my friend Kellen Terrett. I haven't even introduced. This is my good friend.
No,
No, Kellen, what are the credits that people might know you from when we did improv together and
Way back
sketch
in the
together?
day.
We've known each other for decades. You
for
were
a
one
very
of
long time. I've known and have loved you, Rudy, for a majority of my life, which feels incredible to think about that. To be like, oh wow, right? I've known you long. I'm not longer than I've been alive, Jesus. But you're one of the oldest friends, and you are one of those core people in my life. Where again, when you were in Korea, I hadn't seen you for a while. We jump on the phone. We're right back at it. It's absolutely wonderful.
We're rowing.
Yeah. But we parted ways. Our paths took us in different places. I went east and came to Chicago, and you went so far west. You ended up in Korea.
It ended up being east.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So that's where we've been for a bit, and I've been here in Chicago performing, doing sketch, doing improv, writing shows. I have a few like independent movie credits. I've wrapped on a movie here 2 weeks ago, which they're just started editing process, so that's fun.
That's exciting. Were you an actor or a writer, or what were you?
I was an actor in this one. I'm part of a small kind of collective of actors that this studio uses. We were all improv people here in Chicago, and one of the guys, John Silver, who's the director and producer and does a lot of the writing, he has us come in, and he's so collaborative, he's so fun. Where our first film we did is a Civil Hoax, which is a documentary that we did that's about Civil War deniers, believing that the Civil War never happened.
Okay.
And I felt really lucky because he's like, Kellen, come in. We're doing sort of like a group scene where it's all of the characters in the basement, and you're like a newcomer who's not really sure about what's going on. Do whatever you want.
Yeah.
And to have that flexibility, to have that freedom to come in and collaborate. And he's brought me in all of his projects, and it's very much fun that way, where I get to kind of, he gives me room to bring what I want to bring into a movie and into a feature, and I get to write my own stuff, and he slots it in, which is really fun.
That's so cool. It's so nice when a director both has a vision and trusts their actors.
Oh yeah.
And so you can do the things that make you shine, that you want to bring to the table. That I feel it makes a performance so much more alive and so much more authentic.
Yeah, I feel like also just the trust was already there before we ever got on set, because we've been working for years, performing improv in dirty basement bars, doing sketch, writing, sketches that we later put on YouTube. So it's like the nice thing about working with that group of people is everyone knows each other. There's no ego. It is very much like, hey, I'm hanging out with my friends.
Yeah.
Let's be professional. We want to make this work.
Yeah.
Like we have a script and we're going to stick to the script for a couple takes, and then it's like, okay, cool. Now let's have some fun. So that's nice to be trusted that way.
That's got to be a real skill too, to bring that kind of energy, to go from like a director who is I've worked with, done some acting on stage and on screen and that kind of stuff, but there are certain types of directors who are much more hands-on and much more specific, and they really want a specific outcome. And then there's other ones who give you a little bit more freedom, and that's got to be a skill for a director to kind of hone.
Oh yeah. I mean, I do think, this being the fourth movie that I've worked on with John, I've been in rooms with younger actors, both in terms of their age as well as how long they've been acting, and they are expecting the director to hold their hand, to give them a line reading. And I don't know, man, it's just, maybe it's one of those things where I've just been doing it long enough where I know as an actor, my role is to come with something, to make that choice with the character, to have an idea, and then the director is either going to encourage that idea, shape it, or they're going to say, oh, okay, cool, let's talk about this. And then there's a compromise of like, all right, well, here was your choice, here was my expectation. But like, being able to be trusted to come in and bring something with with a collective piece of art that way is really, it's a real fun experience that way. And it's nice. Again, I've known my scene partner in this last film. The premise is this is a movie premiere. A young director has made this movie, and it's sort of this farce around what happens on the night of the premiere.
Okay.
And we were really lucky to be filming on set at the Music Box Theater here in Chicago, which is like an over 100-year-old movie theater. It's incredible.
Cool.
And my scene partner, who I've known for a while, who have been performing on stage with, she's done some movie work before, but she's never worked with this guy before. And so she really came in. She's like, well, what do you think he wants? And I was like, doesn't matter what he wants. What are you going to do? What are we going to do? Let's have some fun. Let's run some lines. Let's kind of have some fun with this. Let's make sure we're enjoying ourselves. Because if we're not enjoying ourselves, the director's going to see it. And then that means the audience is going to see it. So at the very least, let's make sure we're having fun.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, that's so cool. It's so fun that you're getting to stretch those muscles and be an actor and get some direction and have some freedom and make some artistic choices. We're recording this the week that the Oscar nominations came out. I'm an Oscar dork. I love the Oscars. I love trying to watch all the big nominees before we go. Have you seen Poor Things?
I have not seen Poor Things, but I plan on seeing Poor Things. I mean, everything he's done. Killing of Sacred Deer is one of my favorite movies. Lobster's great. Again, the favorite. So it's more having two kids under 10. It's hard to go and see a movie and be like, okay, let's go do this.
Oh my God. I saw Poor Things this week, and I've only seen The Lobster, so that was the only thing I knew. It was the same director, Yorgos.
Yeah,
and so that was the only thing I knew going in. I didn't even know the story. I knew who was in it, and it had a lot of buzz. Instant classic in my mind. Instant classic. Emma Stone. I'm not even a huge Emma Stone fan, and she nailed it, knocked it out of the park, did such an amazing job. And I just wonder what that direction in acting was like, because I'm fully for both of them to win director and actress, because it's so good. But it's such an epic story and such a huge role that I just wonder what goes into something like that between a director and an actor.
I don't know, man. He's such an interesting director. Like, if you go back and you watch The Lobster, it's so stylized,
right?
And then you watch Killing of a Sacred Deer, and it's also so stylized. And then you watch The Favorite, and it's a historical piece. It's also stylized. Like, I feel like Yorgos as a director has a very, very clear vision. He's bringing actors in. Yeah. Everyone's bought in. They all understand the movie. They all understand the process. Like, there has to be so much trust in terms of the actor's creativity in a role like that.
Yeah.
And as a director, I imagine you're not bringing those people into that project unless you trust them, unless you know, I know they've got it. They've got this. And what's so interesting is I also think with Poor Things, all of his movies are so, the performances almost seem muted. Right? They're in such like almost this magic realism sort of world around them, but the performances are sort of muted. Whereas Poor Things feels so vibrant, at least from the trailers and everything I've read, that like Emma Stone's performance is far from muted. Right? She is so vibrant in terms of her choices, her style of acting, this character, everything about it. I can't wait to see it.
It's so amazing, and it's not muted for most of the movie, but you'll see how much the character and how much the film itself changes from beginning to end. It's like small and hard to watch. Like it's through this weird fisheye lens for like the first act or so, and then it kind of gradually grows and increases. It's just a beautiful. I can't wait for you to see it. I can't wait for everyone to see it, because I think it's such it's like Feminist Frankenstein. It's a one-of-a-kind film. It's so cool and fun, and I had no idea what I was getting into. And I was like, I'm like, I don't know about you, but I'm the person in the theater who's laughing by myself. The whole time. Like, I had like 20, 30 laughs that I was the only person in the whole theater laughing. And it wasn't packed or anything, but I'm like, why are you freaking dorks not laughing? It's so
They're
ridiculous.
up here. They're in their head.
Yeah.
They're trying to understand it. It's supposed to you. You're feeling it. You're enjoying it. The laughter. You're surprised. You're present in the experience, right? Like laughter is the sound of surprise. You're enjoying the experience. People not laughing is they're intimidated by it. They're in their head. They're completely intellectualizing it.
Yeah. So I love the movies, and I love getting in a dark room, turning my phone off, and just letting someone take me on a ride. And Yorgos is someone I want to take me on a ride.
Oh, you got to see the rest of his movies then. You really, really do.
Oh my
Killing
God.
of a Sacred Deer. Barry Keoghan in that movie is so absolutely incredible. The Lobster is one of my favorites. The Favorite is such a wild movie. And again, that's another Emma Stone movie where I was like, man, I don't know why Emma Stone is in this movie. And then you see it, you're like, this woman can do no wrong. And she's so young and so good.
Wow. I'm so excited to see Killing of a Sacred Deer and The Favorite now. I'm such a director guy. I love watching a director's like whole career unfold and seeing what choices they make. It's fascinating to me as a movie film enjoyer and studier and person who tries to write here and there. So it's like so cool to see someone just execute so amazingly. So
like what did they learn? And if you're watching a director, you get to see, oh, they were using this style in this movie, and then here is a little bit of this, and then you get to see this here, and you get to see this larger tapestry of how they themselves as an artist are creating, and you can see the influence of the actors and the production crew that they're working with, the scripts that they're working with, the production studios that they're working with, right? You have certain sort of directors like, oh, I only work with these production studios, and then they work someplace else, and suddenly they're able to do different things. It's so good.
Do you have a studio right now that you're excited when you see that opening credit come across?
I mean, this is so, inside baseball, but like anything A24 makes, I'm going to go see.
Yeah.
I think The Lamb is the only A24 movie where I was like, nah, man, that was a stinker for me.
Yeah.
It was pretty to look at, but like it was the only movie where I was like, this could have been 30 minutes. I've been fine with that. Didn't need this whole movie. But anything A24 does, I know I will go and see because I trust the people that they're doing. I like Neon a lot. I think Neon does really good stuff as well.
I'm all about A24. Whenever I see an A24 logo, I'm like, oh, I didn't know that. Great. Awesome.
Great.
Yeah, it's so fun. And, we've talked a lot about trust in here. And I think immediately when we first met, we just met in college. I was taking an acting class and I went to an improv jam. And we just kind of essentially clicked from the start and trusted each other immediately. And you were like one of my big first you were like the first, you really opened my eyes. You were a part of my coming of age story, 100%.
Oh, that's very sweet.
I returned from living abroad and I started to like go to theater and go to improv and do that kind of stuff. And then and then I trusted each other immediately when we were on an improv group and did sketch and so much stuff for years. And it was just so cool to have you were like a really tall Yoda for me. You showed me like these great albums. You're like, oh, this is what music is. I feel like there was probably a scene somewhere where we're like smoking cigarettes and you're putting on records in your old apartment. I've never smoked cigarettes with you, but we're
so
like drinking
funny.
and listening to jazz and you're like, this is music. And so it just makes perfect sense that you just slid so nicely into the dad role.
Yeah, thanks, man. I think trust is absolutely there. I mean, like there's so many people I think that we both knew. I don't know, maybe not to get too philosophical about it, but I just felt like we were just like, oh, cool, we get it. We were kind people. We are kind people. Who I think had a certain level of like adventure and a good sprinkling of cynicism, and we both just saw the world in a very similar sort of way, but also had such different backgrounds in the way that we sort of consumed the world and saw the world and interacted with it. It just felt very, very just like everything. The people who you gravitate the most are just it's the ones who are the easiest, right? There wasn't a lot of friction between the two of us. despite having, not known each other for a very long time. It was just like, oh yeah, cool. I trust this person. Good. They're in.
Totally. So you were like a big, starting point for me comedically. When did you get into comedy? How long had you been doing stuff when we kind of met in college? Or what was the genesis of your comedy story?
My comedy story is it's kind of a story of just needing something to rebel against, because I had a father who when I was still living in Colorado was working for the district attorney, and I had a mom who was the head of an ER system in Colorado. We moved to Oregon. My dad's still working for the city. My mom's working in hospitals, and I wasn't going to go drink and do drugs and rebel that way. And so I sort of realized moving to Eugene, this incredible place where you can be whoever you want to be. There's no judgment. Was like, oh, cool. I'm going to go be the little poet, artist, philosopher I've always wanted to be, and started performing and like doing, musicals in high school and the rest of that. My plan originally was to move straight to Chicago. I knew I had this idea. I wanted to come to Chicago. My parents begged me to stay in town and to get a degree, because neither of them had gotten degrees and they'd both suffered and really, really struggled. They're like, you got to get a degree. You got to get a degree. And I said, okay, cool. I'm going to rebel and I'm going to get a theater degree.
Screw you.
And my freshman year, I was auditioning for the improv team, mostly because people were saying, oh, you can't do that until you're a junior or they're at the very least a sophomore. And I was like, well, they can tell me no. And I just was like, I remember there was a comedy class my freshman year that I got into because I auditioned, and it wasn't like, oh, I'm good. I just didn't. It was, for me, I was sort of fueled by this, like, it's not like a fuck you to my parents, but I needed something to be able to say, well, if I have to be here, I want to do it for myself.
Yeah.
I wanted to learn as much as I could. And there was also a lot of really talented and funny people there at the early time. And I just wanted to just soak up as much as I could.
Yeah.
And from there, it was just like, great. And it was such a great time because I was around other incredibly funny people who I would later come to know here in Chicago when I moved out here. And then there were also peers. There was people that we worked with, people we became very, very close with. And that felt incredible to get to know and to build a community at Oregon.
Yeah.
People who were interested in comedy, people who were interested in not doing sort of like traditional theater, our own sort of avant-garde, like, hey, this is how we want to perform. And we created so much stuff out of nothing. And I look back on that time and say, like, wow, we were like barely 20 years old and we were producing our own stuff, not at the college campus. We were finding theaters in town.
Lord Lieber.
Marketing. Yeah, exactly. Marketing our own shows, producing our own shows, finding ways to bring people, like, again, the idea, like, hey, we get a keg of beer and we'll sell at a show. This is what we had to do. And it was so fun. And yeah, it just sort of propelled me further and further to say, okay, now that I've got the college time, I learned the things that I wanted to do. Now I got to go and put it to use someplace. And Chicago became the easiest place for me to go. And I came here and started auditioning at theaters and started working at places like IO and the Annoyance Theater and met people there. And, the rest is history. And at a certain point in my career here in Chicago, I was performing professionally like 5 nights, 6 nights, sometimes 7 nights, every single night. And Chicago, it was the, we sort of talk about it because it's not that way anymore here in Chicago, but it was like, living in Berlin before World War II. Right. It was everyone was here. It was the golden age. Everyone was here. It was open. It was warm. It was still complicated. There were still a lot of things that were going on. There was still a lot of, some good, but also some bad. But it was a great time to be here, to learn, to experience things, to meet people, to exist, which was lovely.
Yeah. That's so cool. I think, and you were also a trailblazer. You were one of the first people I saw with a web series that I knew. You and Drew, right? Drew, what's his last name?
Drew Mellon.
Drew Mellon. Hilarious. Yeah. You two had instant chemistry. connected beautifully, and you just improvised. What was it called? The single? No,
The Unemployed Life.
The Unemployed Life. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. So the web series started because Drew and I were both unemployed at the time. We were both comedians. We were both trying to do things, and we literally just went to a park one day and set up a camera and just started talking.
Yeah.
And we went to 3 different spots and we edited it down. It was like it was an hour's worth of footage. We found these 2 characters that were sort of exaggerations of ourselves.
Right.
And then we made a goal. We're like, we're going to film this every single week until we're bored. And 5 years later, we had over 250 episodes. We wrote a couple different pilots. We met Bob Odenkirk's production team came out and saw us, and we got to meet them, and they were interested in working with us. And then life happens. Like it's absolutely wild, because it's like at a certain point in that series, I have a baby.
Right.
At a certain point in that series,
did you write that in? Was that written in?
It's implied that something happens to Kellen that changes his life significantly, but it's so funny because there are episodes where my oldest son is in a baby carrier underneath the camera.
So Denny's your cameraman.
He's the cameraman. And then there's some episodes where he's a little bit older and like there's a kid playing in the background and you can clearly see that that's Dennis because he's this little blonde kid. But no, it was never about that, because it is certain, like what we sort of realize, and we still talk and we still write together. The characters were kind of going in like it's Always Sunny sort of, like they were just awful individuals.
Okay.
Yeah. And we realized when we stopped filming, these characters were going to be Trump fans. We joke about like, if we were still filming this, we would have been in DC for January 6th. We would have 100% gone and filmed as Trump supporters there. And that got scary to us as we started seeing the world changing. We're like, that's not who we are as people, but we know these characters are this way. And I think we never did the series. It's not to say we didn't do the series to get discovered. We wanted to be discovered. But when we talked with Odenkirk's folks and we talked with other producers, there was something about it where they were like, okay, cool, we like this, but we want you to be more like this, or we want you to be more like this. And again, people get into it. And remember, we had a conversation about, essentially everyone said, hey, this is great, but you can't do this in Chicago. You got to move to LA. And I was like, well, I can't. I've got a family here.
Yeah.
And Drew, being the great friend that he is, he said, like, well, if I'm not doing it unless I'm doing it with you. So you can't. We're not going to do it.
We're not doing it.
Which is amazing. Yeah. Such selflessness. And Drew, for the audience, Drew is, imagine Chris Farley without all the drug and alcohol problems, right?
Totally.
Drew has this energy, the same sort of gravity, the same sort of everything that Chris Farley had without any of the problems. And he was incredibly funny and smart and intelligent and sharp. And to this day, is still one of the funniest people that I know here in Chicago, incredibly talented. But he also is the sort of person who's never been interested in being famous. He just wants to be able to perform and make people laugh.
That's so good. Do you find that Chicago draws more people of that ilk, of that nature, than fame chasers, or is there a healthy combo?
Ooh. I think it's not a healthy combo. I think it's actually I think it's an unhealthy combo. I think what I know about Chicago, and especially the folks who went to LA or New York later, is, and I remember Robert Smigel talked about this, Bob Odenkirk talked about this. A lot of these people who came out of Chicago talk about this, of Chicago is like your grad school. It's your comedy grad school. You come to Chicago to sharpen your teeth, to really hone in your voice, to really experience a lot of different things. If you want to do stand-up, it's a great place to do stand-up. It's a great place to learn how to do touring. It's a great place to really hone that craft. It's a great place to do sketch. It's a great place to do a lot of stuff. And then you launch to another market. If you want to be bigger. Chicago is still an incredible place to be a like working class actor. Even after the pandemic happened, a lot of theaters shut down. It is still a place where you can have an agent, you can get commercials, you can do things, you can still be working have like, you know, a part-time job to also pay bills, but like I know more working actors who are happy, who own homes than any place in LA, in New York, or the other places. And I think people come to Chicago and then go to LA or go to New York with that energy. And I've seen them be more successful because, not because of the connections they made, but just because they know who they are more. And they have that sort of drive and that laser focus, so that when they get in the deep end, which is LA or New York, they stand out so much more. Instead of the people who moved to LA, who are like trying to find themselves in LA in the sea that is this mercurial, like, rat race that you need to be young and hip and all these other things. The people who, I mean, Tim Baltz, who was a person who I worked with a ton here in Chicago, who was a teacher of mine, who became a friend of mine and a mentor, you know, he moved out there and is this incredible actor who was on Gemstones and has done all these really, really great stuff because he knew who he was. He moved out there. He got what he was trying to do. He had a voice. He had an act, and it was easy to hire him. Instant hire.
That's amazing. That's so cool. So, okay, here's a question on voice for you. How do you think people can go about finding their voice as a performer, as a comedian?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think it's sort of twofold, right? Because I think it's the same way that we have to find our voice, like as people, right? Like your voice is your comedic voice. It to me is only so far as is there some truth that is actually coming from you. I think about the comedians who I will always watch, right? There are so many great stand-up comedians where you're like, boy, there's a certain level of truth in what they are saying. And that truth is so goddamn funny.
Yeah.
Right?
Right.
That voice comes from them obviously doing the work, honing the jokes, right? I think about like Maria Bamford, for example, like someone whose voice is so unique, so incredibly, absolutely incredibly funny, right?
Yeah.
And who has grown as a comedian, but also like Maria is so funny because she is so honest with herself and then honest with the audience. If Maria doesn't know who she is as an individual, I don't think the act works, right? I think about like Pete Holmes. Like here's another guy who's super, super funny. And I feel like the times where Pete Holmes, his stuff hasn't worked is when he wasn't maybe being true to himself or true to what he knows and what he does. And I feel like we're in like the renaissance of Pete Holmes where I'm like, God, he's so fucking funny because he knows who he is. He understands what's funny to him. And then that translates to the audience.
Yeah, Pete is eminently listenable. His first two albums were like two of my big early comedy albums that I listened to over and over. And yeah, speaking like early influences, you were mad about Maria Bamford. And for the audience, Kellen actually makes an appearance in the Comedians of Comedy documentary film in Eugene, Oregon. He and several of our other good friends who are also comedians, Greg and Ian, was it?
Greg, Ian, and John Youngkin. We toured with them. You could hear our voices. There's 5 different shows. We went to all the different shows throughout that entire thing. And it's wild to think about. That was like the first original piece of content that Netflix produced.
Oh yeah,
it's wild. It's
and you were in it, and it's so cool.
Yeah.
And I mean, that Into the Purple Onion are just 2 golden pieces of comedy. Those are those are 2 of my huge comedy influences. Honestly, you watch The Purple Onion and it gives you hope as a comedian because it is so much of comedy. It's the struggle. It's like, oh my God. Galifianakis is just you had that Galifianakis shirt. I still remember that shirt. It was just what did it say, pretentious or did it say Galifianakis? It said it's big picture of Galifianakis.
Big picture of him, this like very impressionist, like sort of print of his face and his beard and his hair. It just said pretentious, and I was like, man, this is so good. Yeah, it's so funny. Like, to call back what you're saying, like we're sitting around listening to jazz records. It was probably me putting on like Steve Martin's "Let's Get Small" like, because that's the thing. Like, I know for me as a high school student, like my partner and I laugh so much because she's like, she'll put a song on and I'm like, I've never heard the song. She's like, this song was huge when we were kids, and I was like, oh, that's because I was listening, to National Lampoon records that I found at the Goodwill when in high school, right? When I was the esoteric, pretentious, like comedy nerd who was just obsessed with learning and doing and just taking in all that stuff.
Totally. I love that. Yeah, and it was just so fun to be able to, have you kind of Sherpa me around in many ways, and like invite them up. You introduced me. You made me. Kellen, you are the king of mixtapes. If you are not still making mixtapes and CDs for people, good, because that talent cannot be wasted on 20 years ago. It's not only for college students that you're trying to get laid by. It is for all types of people.
All types of people. I love making a mix. I love doing those things just because it's so fun. And it's so fun also just to do it for someone, and especially someone like you who I knew is like, oh, these are jokes or these are comedians that I think you need to know, right? Yeah. And then invite them up is so good to be like, the H. John Benjamin, the Aziz Ansari, all of these incredible comedians who go on and do other stuff. And it's just like, right, this was like a small time show in New York before any of these people blew up.
Yeah. Man. You also introduced me to the Flaming Lips and Amy Winehouse. So many great acts that were so awesome, that are like thousands and thousands of listens later. I'm like, oh, they're a part of me.
They're a part of you.
Another thing I remember, this is Jokes and the Gym.
Yeah.
And so there is an athletic or mental and physical health aspect to it. I remember you've always been a cyclist.
Yes.
Are you still pumping the legs? Are you still pistoning it out over in the Windy City?
That's all I do. I am a 40-year-old individual who does not have a driver's license, who's never had a driver's license, who has a cargo bike that I put my children in to ride to and from school all year round.
Yeah.
Sure, it's negative 10 degrees outside. I got the gear. I'm going to get on the bike and ride.
Heck yeah. I'm going to get on the bike and ride.
I'm going to ride.
Get on your bikes and ride.
Woo! And that's the nice thing about Chicago. It's flat, right? So it's easy to ride around all the time. I've always enjoyed cycling. It brings me so much joy. It's absolutely terrifying to be a cyclist. It's especially in Chicago, but
with human cargo.
Yeah. When I got the two little guys in there, trying my best. But I when I think about fitness, right? When I think about fitness, Rudy, when I think about the way you influence me, you've been so complimentary of me. When I think about the way you knew your body, you understood how your metabolism worked, how your body worked in terms of what you were hungry for, how you did all these things. You were such an enormous influence on me. I, to this day, when I think about the times where I would talk with you about working out and just how resistant to it I was. There's so many times where I think about how happy you were naturally just from being able to be in touch with your body. And I remember when I first started then being like, okay, I'm going to go for runs, and having this sort of feeling like, God, this is just what Rudy was talking about. And then starting to get into lifting and being like, God, I wish I had not like I didn't listen, but I wish I had implemented the wisdom, not the knowledge, the wisdom that you naturally knew and understood then, right? It was just such clarity because the way you could regulate your emotions, the way you could regulate your thoughts and your body, right? There was just a sense of like, well, Rudy's like a demigod, right? Rudy's got the fucking body of an Adonis. His mind is clear. Nothing can stop him. I am a simple goblin, right? I can't lift a five pound weight. I can barely run. The only way I can get exercise is if I go on this piece of technology known as a bicycle.
Meanwhile, I'm also crying 5 times a week. I get done with a set of squats and I'm like, I miss my No, well, I appreciate that. And I'm glad that rubbed off in some way. And it's like the joke I have right now, it's like I became a personal trainer because I love annoying my friends. That's what I do, because that's what it is. That mindset that you had towards exercise and physical fitness is so common in the comedy community.
Oh my
and
gosh.
I just want to have a conversation that is not that. I don't want the conversation to constantly be, isn't working out shitty? It's like, okay, yeah, sometimes it is. It's hard. Working out's hard. But guess what? No cool shit happens from stuff that isn't hard. So like, you got to go through the hard stuff if you want to get to the good stuff. And the good stuff for me comes from that consistency, comes from knowing that part of myself. And you say I've known my body. I've always looked at my body, the relationship I have with my body as this, like my body is its own thing. And I use my mind to regulate it. I listen. I've always wanted to listen to my body. And oftentimes that means I have to leave to go eat because I'm just fucking hungry. And if I don't go eat right now, then I'm just going to be crying on a sidewalk somewhere in Portland because we're on a trip and I hadn't planned out my meals. And that's not constant. That's not always. But it is relevant enough that people would like introduce me as my hungry friend Rudy. Like this is the guy who eats, and it's like, yeah, I have to eat because my body is telling me it needs food, or I have to work out because my body is telling me it needs motion. And to me, it's just such a gift. I've always been amazed by like the ability to do anything with our bodies. It's crazy that we can flail these meat sacks around to me. Like, I'm truly grateful at all times for that, because you don't know when it's going to go away.
Exactly,
you never know what's going to go away. And that was maybe something from the Four Agreements, is just to that, which is like my favorite book of all time. And one of the things in there is about familiarizing yourself with the angel of death, essentially, just knowing that it could come at any point. And I think that's something that people don't like to look at. And I've always kind of looked at it and never felt that I was, close, but you never know. That's why I'm like making my own shit. That's why we're doing our own things. It's like, I'm not planning on moving to LA or New York right now. That's just not in the cards. I got family and cats here. You got family in Chicago. You're settled. It's like, why don't we just do the things that we want to do? You want to act in movies? There's a movie around. Move towards that. How do you make decisions that make you be able to do the things you want to do? And whether that's do a comedy, that's why I recorded a comedy special. That's why I wrote a TV show. That's why I'm making a podcast, because these are the things you do as a comedian, wherever you are. And it's so gratifying.
I think really, like, one thing that I can say that I've always, like, the thing that I know about you, right? If I can praise and compliment you,
sure,
right? Without getting too vulnerable, I feel like you're able to admit when things are scary but need to be done, right? You're able to do things that absolutely fucking terrify you and work through it, right? And I feel I have always admired your ability to live in a state that is uncomfortable, right? Lifting and working out takes effort and energy. It takes focus, and it takes, and I understand this as I have sort of adopted fitness and both mental and physical fitness in my life over the last 5 years. It's like, actually, what it really comes down to is, do I love myself enough to do something hard, right? And I feel so often, and I don't want to criticize comedians, but I can say this as someone who's been in the comedy scene for my entire adult life, and someone who's worn this self-loathing badge proudly of, well, I'm a comedian, so I need part of my skill is hating myself.
Yep.
And what I can say is, getting back to the question you were kind of saying about voices, when I started taking care of myself, I found a different voice that was easier and more enriching and ultimately funnier, because it was coming from a place of, I love this and I love myself. And as long as I'm doing this for myself, I'm great. And that came from taking care of my body, taking care of my mind, really looking in the mirror and being able to examine my life and saying, similar to you, I've got littles who are looking at me, and a 10-year-old who is modeling things that they're seeing with me. And I need to examine, we're in the middle of the pandemic and I can see they are anxious because I'm anxious. What can I be doing to take care of myself? What can I be doing to show them? And saying, well, if I'm putting it all on them, I need to really do this for myself.
Yeah.
I need to take care of myself.
100%.
And the fucking joy and bliss that has come from me being like, when I'm nice to me, when I believe in me, when I'm willing to believe that I can do the hard things, man, nothing stops me.
Yeah. Such a great lesson.
Yeah. And I go back to this idea of, who are the people who naturally were doing that? And you're at the top of the list, right? You do hard things, and it's not that you make it look easy, but you make it look fun.
Good. Well, that's the whole point. Have you seen any of the 5-minute workouts? I'm starting these 5-minute workouts, and it's just me working out, doing 2 exercises back to back for 5 minutes and talking shit. And it's like I kind of see them as little vlogs almost. It's like, but I'm also honing my skills as an editor, as a director, as a producer, as a film cinematographer. It's like I have desires to do all that stuff at some point on another level, on a greater level. But for now, it's like I believe that there is an audience out there that has yet to find me. And so when they do, I want to make sure that there's fun, valuable stuff out there for them to access. And it's like working out. If you got 5 minutes and you want to work out, freaking do it. Freaking do it. And that's what the 5-minute workouts are for. It's like, it's not going to get you ripped. It's not going to get you jacked, but it's going to get you a little more energy, and it might get you a chuckle, and it'll give you a little more knowledge about your body and exercising in general. And it's like, so do that with your buddy. Let's have fun, And so I just am firmly of the belief that 5 minutes is better than no minutes. And we know that as comedians because we perform it 5 minutes at a time. You know what I mean? Everything is 5 minutes at a time. Oh, it's just 5 minutes. You know what? If you do 5 minutes every day, that's 25 minutes. That's a lot more than nothing.
Yeah. Well, I mean, there's this, I think, this idea of this external validation of, I want to be a comedian on the level of the best, right? If I'm not performing to a stadium full of people, if I'm not making millions of dollars, if I don't have my own TV show, then I'm a failure. Versus I got 5 minutes. Doesn't matter how many people are in the bar or in the theater. Doesn't matter how many people are listening on and they're like on a podcast or a video. I'm doing this because this is leading to the progression of the things that I want to do. Because ultimately, you're doing this for you and you want to share it with the people. You're not saying, people want this, so I'm going to do it and lose myself. Your voice, your intention, your wisdom comes through with all of the stuff, Rudy. Same thing with your special, same thing with your writing. It's all coming from a place of you. It all works for you that way. And it's so inspiring to see, again, doing something hard. It's not easy, right? You're special. It's not like you just woke up one day, you're like, hey, I guess tonight I'm going to do a special. It took you had been talking about doing the special for years. For years of this is my goal. I'm working towards this. And it was the intention and the effort and the dedication to creating this for yourself. And then when you look back, you're able to say, look at all the small steps that I did, the little 5-minute workouts that I did every day to get me to this place to do it. And you have it.
Yeah. The 5-minute workouts are the open mics. The 5-minute workouts are the rehearsals. The 5-minute workouts are the time you put in.
Yeah.
And so, it's like it all, you know what? It almost took me making that special to be able to call myself a comedian. That's how long it took for me to hold my head up. And it makes me emotional thinking about it because it's not about this huge accomplishment. And I am super proud of it. It was on my 13th comedy anniversary, and so many people came out to show some love and support. And it's like, I have a special on YouTube, and that's pretty cool. I'm excited about that. And so I can say, yes, I'm a comedian, and I can kind of be a little nicer to myself. because guess what? I freaking busted my ass for 18 months to put that thing together. And it is what it is. It's not the world's best comedy special, but who gives a fuck? I'm not trying to make the world's best anything. I'm trying to make the world's best Rudolph James Tyburczy. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
And so to have so many people that were really excited about it, including yourself, meant the world to me. And it was so cool because I did want to, yes, highlight my ability as a comedian, but also the journey I've been on as a comedian. Yeah. And that's what a lot of people left saying was like, what a cool story you have as well. And that's what I feel we should also be so lucky as to have the opportunity to do, which is share our story, right? That's at the core of every comedian, is the desire to share our own story or screw over their parents. One of the two.
I think, again, really, like, you make it look, and I really do mean this, you make it look both effortless as well as so effortful, right? You are showing through your act, through your actions, through your intention, through your dreaming, this is what I want for me. Right? I remember when we were talking, you're like, yeah, I'm going to Seoul and I'm going to go do this, and meeting, Kanane and all these other people who were doing stuff. And for me, there was never a part for me where I was like, well, this is so silly. I was like, no, this is exactly what he has wanted. He did these things. He had a vision and he put in the work to make it happen. And if people listening to this episode aren't learning that, like, oh, right, this is not just Rudy's not the only person who can do this. Literally any person can do this. All it takes is a little bit of effort, a little bit of intention, and a little bit of self-love. And then you can do these things. How many people did we fucking know who were brilliant and hardworking, but fucking couldn't stand that it was a little hard, or that they couldn't, well, and they point to everybody else. Oh, it's these people, or it's these people, right? It's so easy to blame others. It's so easy to blame the system. It's so easy to say that everyone else is wrong versus saying, hey, I'm going to keep working even if it's a little hard.
Yeah. And building that self-accountability is really hard. It's not an easy thing. You have to put in a lot of intentionality. You have to, my thing on the first day of classes when I would teach conversation in English classes was build good habits. Build good habits, because it's you. That's the number one thing I learned in university, and it took me 5 whole years to learn it, and that is, it's up to me. My learning is up to me. Your learning is up to you. And yes, there are certain barriers that we all have. I understand that. I totally get that. As someone who is told that they have depression and ADHD this year, I get that there are things that sometimes feel beyond your control and sometimes definitely are beyond your control.
Yeah, absolutely.
But at the same time, okay, that may be the case. But what are the parameters you have? And how can you adjust your actions to get the results that you're looking for? Because whenever I got mad or upset at something that was beyond my control, and then I took a moment to take a deep breath and say, what can I do? That usually helps so much.
Oh yeah. Well, I mean, it's so easy. I've been in this place where I have othered people. Oh, well, the reason they're successful is because of their economic background. The reason they're successful is because of their physical attributes. The way they're successful is because they made these connections. All I am doing is creating walls for myself that don't actually exist. Every single person is the same in the sense where we all have things we cannot control, right? Sure, there are people who might have things that you see as valuable, and you look at them and you say, well, they have this and I don't, therefore they are better and I am worse. Or we can say, oh boy, we all are the same. None of us have any fucking control of the person, the body, the environment that we're initially born into. It's about what do we make of it. And yeah, there are some people who might on the outside look like it's a lot easier, but we can't live them. We can't be in their heads. We can't understand these things. And I don't know, man, like I know for me, my ability to stop comparing and just appreciate what was around me
Mm-hmm.
made existing as a human being and being a creative person 1,000 times more enjoyable, because I wasn't looking at other people and saying they have something I want and therefore I can't have it.
Yeah.
And then when I would see people be successful, I was just so happy for them.
Yeah.
Right. Versus this sense of, oh, they were able to do this and I couldn't. And
Yeah.
I don't know, man, like it's all about being able to check yourself, to be able to say, what am I capable of doing today?
Right.
Right. And not living in a fantasy, as most of us do, because that fantasy that we're living in is a way of coping with the fact that life is hard. And in fact, every single person that has ever existed has had some hardships in their life. It's just not the same. And it's about understanding, well, this is the hardships that I have.
Yeah, totally. And I think often fantasy, it leads to inaction, whereas as opposed to grounding yourself in reality does the opposite. So moving forward, thinking about that for you, what kind of goals do you have moving forward that may be physical or mental or comedically or performative related?
Yeah, I mean, it's a great question, Rudy. I made a goal for myself last year. This time last year, my partner and I, we usually go to New Orleans. We just fucking drink and eat for like 5 days. It's
Love
a
it.
blast. I loved it. I went super hard.
Yeah.
And I came home and I was like, not like blackout hard, but it was like it was one of those things where it's like, I have not been intoxicated for 5 days straight since I was in college.
It's been a while.
I'm turning 40 this year. I really got to look at this. And I just said, all right, I'm going to try and be sober for January.
Okay.
And then I wanted to be sober for February. And then the entire year, I think I had 4 social drinks. Right? Last year.
Cool.
And for me, it's about a continuance of that. Like a goal for me is to say, because what I was noticing, again, comparing myself to others, right? I'm on TikTok, I'm watching people of the fitness influencers, and I'm like, how come I can't get my body to look like that? How come I can't get my muscles to look like that? And then my partner is looking at me and she's like, I go to the gym 5 days a week and I can't get as big as you can. Look at you. You lift a kettlebell at home a couple times a week and suddenly your arms are a lot bigger and your shoulders are more defined. Kettlebell Kellen, baby. Oof. Oof.
Booyah.
So again, the goal is to say, all right, what am I doing? What am I intaking, right?
What are you putting in your body?
In my body. During the pandemic, I said, great, I'm not going to completely cut out animal-based proteins, but this is an example of a way in which I can be regulating this, right? If I'm going to be cooking every fucking meal for everyone in the family, I get to have control of this and I get to have time to do this. So I really sort of focus on more really thinking about animal proteins and saying, what are the ones that I think are going to be good and what are the ones that are easy and what are the ones that I want to explore on?
Yeah.
Cutting out alcohol was really easy for me.
You're not performing every night of the week anymore, are you?
No, I'm definitely not. And that's the reality. It's like I have 2 children and the world has changed, right? There are not the opportunities to perform every single night in Chicago, let alone LA or New York, right? Like the world has sort of shrunk because of the pandemic and because a lot of these theaters, not to get, too controversial, but a lot of these theaters were in fact, very predatory on people's desire to be a performer. I think for me, what I have learned about myself is I have obsessive tendencies. I had an obsessive tendency when I first came to Chicago, as well as when I was in Oregon, of performing.
Yeah.
It was, if I am not performing as much as humanly possible, I am a failure. And then when I noticed when I couldn't perform, then I was like, great, I need to work out twice a day, every single day, or else I'm a failure. So what I have been really working on over the last couple of years is looking at this anxiety that has traditionally been fueled by a neural pathway in my mind of obsessing, right? Of, if I do X, then I will get Y. And really just happening to be like, great, if I work out a couple times a week, wonderful. If there are circumstances that don't allow me to do that, that's okay. I'm not gonna be a bad person for doing that. Not being so obsessed with the outcome and being more interested and invested in the process. So saying to myself, oh, do I want to have an hour and a half workout where I'm absolutely torturing myself? Or do I want to have a 20-minute, very intentional, mindful exercise routine where I am really just absolutely solely focused, no podcast, no nothing, just totally focused on what my mind and my body are telling me as I'm doing this. And the outcome becomes so much more refreshing and enriching versus the I have to do X to get Y.
And what is the outcome then with that mindset for you?
For me, the outcome so far has just been a deeper appreciation of, one, what my body is capable of doing, two, what my mind can actually cultivate when I am focusing and having this sort of clarity and concentration on an action. Right. My ability to feel so much more in touch and to have this sort of equanimity between my mind, my body, and my spirit, right, feels so much more like just present. I feel like by me being able to be so much more in touch with my body, I understand more of what makes me tick, which then allows me to feel more confident and trust myself more in terms of my creative endeavors, my professional endeavors, and most importantly, my emotional state. Right? That's been the best thing, is by in fact having a deeper focus on what I am doing rather than the outcome. My overall happiness, my overall sense of peace, my sense of like contentedness has gone up. And then when it comes to my creative endeavors, rather than grasping at things and trying to make something work, it feels so much more easy to tap into that same place to say, oh yeah, this is where I'm at.
Yeah.
And then it just flows.
It becomes a fuel. It's literally, how do we fuel our bodies through nutrition and through movement in a way that that's, you know what our brain is? Do you know what our brain is? It's part of our bodies. It's a big glowy meat sack hole thing. It's a bubbly meat, gooey, gross thing, and it needs nutrition. We are burning calories just sitting here thinking, using our brains. Most of the calories we burn, people don't really know this. It's not through exercise, but it's like 80% is just our resting metabolism. So much of it is just from the rigors of day-to-day life, and it's hard. And when you are able to realize and view motion as lotion, motion is what our body wants. It wants to. You don't have to be a weightlifter. I mean, I think strength training is good for every body. Every single person can benefit from it. But the first step is just taking that step. Whatever, move around, wiggle around, stretch, lift the dumbbell, do a push-up, do a squat, do something for 5 minutes today that you didn't do yesterday, and see how that impacts the rest of your life. And I think people are just scared of it because it's a challenge. It's hard.
Yeah.
And we all have so much stuff around our bodies.
Yeah. I mean, and this is where like we kind of get into the philosophical, right? Because there is a part of our mind that, again, we have to remind ourselves where it's like we're still like crazy little, Neanderthal cave people, right? Where a part of our brain, our lizard brain, is telling us, do not extend yourself too far because we don't know if that tiger is outside or not. So that part of you that's like, just sit on the couch and just try and just stay there. There is something to be said. I don't want to say it's a narrative we should trust, but that desire to stay still comes from a place of safety. Now, what we have to be able to do is to remind ourselves, hey, if I don't get up and move, what is that going to do for my overall
health? Tiger's going to get you.
The tiger's going to get me whether or not. The tiger's going to come into the cave if I don't move, right? So I need to be getting out and walk. I need to be doing something. I know during the pandemic, Rudy, I was going absolutely bonkers because I went from being extremely social, performing, having an output for it, to nothing. And for me, again, you say, the motion is the lotion. The thing that saved me during the pandemic, the thing that made me feel like I was thriving, is I started saying, cool, I'm going to walk 4 miles throughout the day. And I'm never going to take the same route. I'm going to try to do a new route, even if I'm just doing the same loop, but the way I'm doing the loop is a little different. But I need to do something. And my ability to get through the pandemic with a child under 7, a partner who was pregnant, it was just like, all right, this is all we're going to do. This is how it's going to do it. And that has informed me in terms of my ability to kind of get through it. I also feel one thing that has been deeply helpful for me, and, this is just, getting back to like the Yoda comment you made, like my ability to understand what my mind is and isn't, to understand when a narrative in my mind is me versus isn't me has been so helpful. So just being able to sit back and notice, oh, that's like to watch the parade that is my thoughts. I often like talk about like to my kids and to my friends about this idea of like, I notice when I'm listening to the podcast that is my anxious thoughts, or I notice when I'm watching the movie that is my deepest, darkest fears, as opposed to thinking, oh, this is a reality. I'm like, oh, right, this is not real. I can sit and watch it. I can notice about it. And I can say, oh, maybe the reason I'm angry at everything is because I haven't eaten. Or maybe it's because I got up at 2:00 in the morning because the 3-year-old needed to tell me about Daniel Tiger, right? Like, and understand, oh, right, that's the reason these things are happening, making those adjustments and, being able to exist and be able to have more compassion for myself versus like, oh, it's other people. They're the reason I'm angry. There's a reason I'm upset. It's just having more compassion. And that compassion for myself translates to compassion for others.
Totally. And I think that being able to move around, again, just hammering that, it's like, that's what allows me to have more compassion for myself, is a lot of the exercise, is the like, you know what, you worked out today. And if you do only one thing today, that's a great thing.
Absolutely.
And I'm jam-packing my days right now. I am trying to learn so much with the podcasting, with the online, with the everything, with becoming a trainer. Like I'm turning 5 corners at once right now. It's a lot, and it's hard, and I haven't found my footing, to be quite honest. But people are responding. People are starting to respond slowly. And so you made a comment about the fact that you have been able to quiet those voices in your mind. And that's so valuable. And it's a hard thing to do because especially during times like the pandemic, when we are more isolated, or ice storms, when it's like hard and you're taking in different forms of media, it's sometimes hard to know what those voices in your head are. Are they mine? Is that voice mine, or is that a voice from somewhere else? And if I am not sure, and then I go for a walk, or I reconnect with nature or my pets or a family member or friends, then it becomes a lot clearer.
Yeah. And again, Rudy, you said this earlier, like being compassionate with yourself allows you to understand that thought, that emotion has a purpose. There is a need that is, in fact, like, I think for me, like, I have a coach who sort of worked me through this, where it was like, I kept talking about my mind like it was another person. And they were like, your mind is not another person. I just wanted to let you know that. Your mind is just a gland that is just, and they were sort of explaining this because we were kind of talking about dreaming and this idea of like, what we think of dreaming, we assume only happens at night. And it's like, no, you're literally dreaming right now. You know, those intrusive thoughts, you know, those little fantasies, that's dreaming. It's the exact same thing. And our brain is just doing this, just sort of like spitting something out. It's just seeing what sticks. The brain is literally just like, it's like a little AI generator. It's like, okay, it's a lizard with a birthday hat, and it's got nipple clamps on, and it says, vote for Reagan, right? And you're like, what the fuck is that about? And it's like, I don't know either. Let's try something new, right?
Yeah. You should make greeting cards.
I should. I really should. And so rather than, and this is what I know about myself, I would get so upset about thoughts, and I would get so upset about like, why I couldn't sleep. You know me, like when we knew each other in Eugene, I never fucking slept. I hated sleeping. I would get like 4 hours of sleep because I just couldn't turn the brain off. And because I felt like my brain was this source of truth, this oracle. I needed to learn things. We were working with ideas and words, and I was always like, oh, there's more to mine. There's more to mine. And guess what? The more you're engaging with your brain that way, your brain's just like, okay, cool. Let's just keep pumping things out. But the more I had compassion for myself, the more I could understand I'm the one in charge. The brain, it's as in control of I as me as my gallbladder or my kidneys. It's all me.
Yeah.
Let's have compassion for ourselves.
Yeah.
Let's be patient with ourselves.
Yeah.
Let's understand none of us are getting any younger. Our body and our brain are trying to tell us stuff. So let's take care of us, and it will take care of us as well. And just being able to be more patient and more compassionate and more loving. And like when I have an intrusive thought, I'm like, rather than being like, oh, stupid, why did I think of that? Why would I? I'm like, yeah, I totally get that. Yeah. I totally get that. Or, and this is, for your more spicy audience members, you want to really turn your brain off. You really want to fuck your brain up and be like, your brain will really shut down. You want to shut down your ego? Say, yes, daddy. The next time your ego is telling you something, just be like, yes, daddy. Yes, daddy. 100% daddy. Your ego will be so humbled, it will shut up and it will go and sit in the corner. And you're like, yeah, daddy, you go and sit in the corner. That's exactly what you should do, daddy. Just
your ego's just going to go stroke itself at that point. Yes, daddy. I wonder, what does your ego look like? It's like it's one of those characters from Inside Out, I don't know. What's the ego look like?
God, what is my ego?
A big cucumber. I feel like yours could be like a carrot.
Yeah, it's probably a carrot. It's like a carrot that's I like the carrot because the carrot kind of has wild hair. It's sort of longer that way.
It should wear gloves.
Yeah, it definitely has gloves. It doesn't want to touch certain things. It's got it has like a book with it where it's sort of like referring to things and writing things down
glasses?
that way. 100% is wearing glasses. Yes, like maybe even little pince nez, like half moon glasses, like very like Morpheus glasses that way. So just to be pretentious, let's be on brand.
I love it. Yeah, I want to meet your ego. It comes out. I've met it. I
was going to say, we've had enough nights of drinking at McMiniman's, but you've 100% met my ego.
Yeah.
I think anytime you've heard me say, actually, that is my ego taking over, Ed.
Yeah. That's great. Okay, before we get into a final question or two, where do you draw the line between ego and confidence? How do you differentiate those two lines for you, or do you think about it? Is it a thing you've intentionally tried to adjust, or what?
No, it's so interesting you say that. It's something I'm working on right now. Like, I often have the issue, again, talking about obsession, right, where I feel like I need to be active, I need to be doing.
Same.
And that, to me, there is nothing wrong with the doing and in being active, but it is what the root of that is, or the destination. The way I myself, and again, this is not advice, this is just my opinion, I notice that my ego always has a destination in mind versus my confidence is just above the experience. So when I notice, it's like that Tim Robbins, meme where it's like, God, I gotta make money on this. That's my ego. When I notice my ego is the marketing person, like, okay, we're going to do this, and then this is going to happen, and then this will happen, and then we'll be here, and then this will be our destination. Everyone will love me and everything else. I'm like, oh, right. That ego is really worried about feeling abandoned. So we got to find the way that everyone will love us, versus confidence is like, I like this. I think this will be good for me.
Yeah.
And I think there is something to be said about having harmony between those two, right? I think our ego is here to help us navigate the world. The ego exists for a reason, right? It's the same reason that any of this exists. There is a purpose for it. What I try to do for myself is to understand when I go to the ego with a job versus letting the ego drive the ship. Right? So if my ego is, I want to write a sketch, or I want to be a part of a show because I want to be the best and I want to be better than others, that's when I know maybe this is in fact not the best idea for me,
Mm-hmm.
or maybe my intent is not as grounded in a humble reality.
Mm-hmm.
But if it's like you say, hey, do you want to come and do this podcast? I'm not like, oh, this will be great because I'm going to sound so smart and everyone's going to love me. I'm like, oh, man, I just want to feel excited connecting with Rudy and talking with Rudy. And if I can espouse something that somebody out there, you listener, I'm talking to you right now,
Hi.
Mike.
You hear that, Mike?
You hear that, Mike?
This is for you.
We're talking to you, Mike. Mike, you can do it.
You got this.
You got this, Mike. You got this. I believe in you, Mike.
Mike's got it.
You heard this. I love you, Mike. We all love you, Mike. And we're rooting for you, and we're voting for you.
Mike.
But there is something like if that comes from a place of like, I am doing this because I'm having a good time. I'm doing this because I want to connect. I'm doing this because I have experience that I think is worthy of other people hearing about. The same way that I might want to make a playlist for somebody, or the same way I'm like, oh, I wrote the sketch because I think this is funny, and boy, if somebody else laughs at it, that's enough.
Yeah, totally. 100%. I love that.
Yeah.
That's so cool. So taking that one step further, if you could give your beginning comedian rebel badass self, sticking it to the man, a single piece of advice or a series of pieces of advice, what would you tell yourself starting out?
Oh, it's so tough, man. It's so tough to really, because in some ways, like the advice, the first place I go to is like, hey, by the way, like, do not get a theater degree. Do not get a philosophy degree. Go get another degree and do something else. It's all of these pieces of advice to prevent the pain that I went through. But when I really think about it, the pain, the suffering that I went through, that all actors and artists, that all human beings go through, is part of it, right? That's the maturing. That is how we season ourselves. And I have the pleasure of being able to look back on that experience and say, yeah, it all had a purpose. Not that it was destined to happen, but that I took something from it and I made something from nothing, right? I took the suffering and I turned it into something that was ultimately good.
Yeah.
So I think the advice that I would give to myself would be to say, believe in yourself, trust yourself, and most importantly, just try to love yourself more. It's going to be hard. It's going to be scary. You're going to be fine. Let's try to enjoy ourselves just a little bit more. And maybe let's not, these 4 a.m. bars in Chicago, we don't have to close them out as often as we want to.
Yeah. So what would you tell somebody just moving to Chicago who's getting into comedy? What is something that you think would be a useful piece of advice for someone on that train?
I think the best piece of advice that I could give to someone in Chicago is understand that this is, like I said before, it's a school, right? You are not going to quote unquote make it. What you are going to do is you are going to learn from others. And the best way you can do that is see shows. Chicago is a great city because there are like the big schools of shows, like your Second City, your Annoyances, your IOs. And those are great places to go and to take classes and to learn from people. It's great. But Chicago is also a place of a lot of these like storefront comedy places, right? The amount of
what are those?
Like a storefront place is like, oh, it would normally be a nail salon, but it closed out and somebody rented it for a month and they're putting on shows there. Like the shows that I've done in people's basements, in attics, in like back rooms in bars, because somebody had an idea for a show. They knew they couldn't take it to a major theater and put it on there. Yeah. So they got scrappy. They found a cool place to put it in. And then that becomes part of the ambiance. It becomes another character in the show. I think the thing that is the most enjoyable about Chicago is the fact that in a part of the country, which is very traditional, very conservative, you get to do extremely untraditional things. And when I see people in Chicago not taking risks, I think they didn't read the syllabus. The place is here to take risks, and you can take as many risks as you want. I'm 40 years old, and I still get to take risks. I still get to do crazy things. I still get to perform. I still get to write. One show that I love so much that I still do is a show called Redacted, where every single month we do a stage reading of a movie, and we do it at a theater in town, like a movie theater in town. And, you know, we sell the place out. People come and they see us. And it's so fun to be a performer in that, to be like, oh, great. We did, you know, You Got Mail. I'm like, why am I reading You Got Mail? This is so fun. How great, how wonderful. And then you get to write things and you can say, great, I love this movie, or I think this movie is absolutely ridiculous. Now I'm going to write, we take the script, and then you get to be the director and kind of be like Mystery Science Theater and like throw in jokes and make commentary. And it's like, right. Yeah, that show could exist in another city. Absolutely. You could see that in Eugene or Portland, but it's so fun to do it in Chicago because there's an audience who is interested in seeing something unconventional and fun and recognizable.
That's awesome. I love that. I love talking to you. I love you.
I love you.
I love
talking to you.
The way I feel when we talk and when we hang out. It's always so invigorating, and it's always such a bright spot in my day, week, month. You know, it's such a great thing. And so I'm so glad that you are excited to be on the pod and that we just got to chat for a while. I think that there's so much that I have learned from you, and that I hope other people learn from you too. I know they do. You're a dad, and you're a family man, and I love that, and I think it's so cool. Do you have anything that you're working on, or anything you want to plug at the moment? Anything that's going on? Where can people find you? Connect?
If people want to, I mean, that's the nice thing about the movies, right? The movies are out there, right? You can go see A Civil Hoax. I think it's on Tubi for free, and then I think it's also on Amazon Prime Video.
A Civil Hoax.
A Civil Hoax.
Love
Civil
it.
Hoax. You can see if you want all, 250 plus episodes of Drew and I being absolute idiots.
Yeah.
Look up the Unemployed Life, but from Kevin Comedy. All those videos still exist.
That's great. They do exist still. They're out there on the tube.
Oh yeah. They're on the tube. Drew and I are cooking up something. Both that he and I have. We're still very, very close, but our life circumstances sort of created a situation where we weren't able to write as often as we wanted to. But we're always texting. We're talking about basketball. We're talking about comedy and other things like that. And we kind of stumbled on an interesting idea that we're trying to work on, and it's looking like it might be a podcast. Him and I have always wanted to do a podcast because clearly we like talking.
Yeah.
But we just trying to find something.
Oh, you'd be great.
One thing that I do for my creative outlet is I play a lot of like Dungeons and Dragons.
Heck
and
yeah.
I have 2 Dungeons and Dragon games that I play that I'm a dungeon master on.
Oh.
I have a group of players that I have, which are like board game players, which is like high drama, very, very serious. It's been really lovely. We've been playing for 3 years. And then I have my Dungeons and Dragons game with my improv friends, which is just Looney Tunes.
Yeah, I love it.
And one of those is eventually going to turn into like a show that you could watch on Twitch or on YouTube.
Oh, fun.
Because it's like the performers, these guys are all performers in different sort of ways. And there's such a great aspect of being able to do like the gambling aspect of D&D of like, I'm going to roll the dice and I don't know what's going to happen is so... Oh, it's the best. It's the absolute best. And then the improv, because the thing for me is it's like I get to improv and then it becomes a story. And it exists. It's real. It's there are times where we'll go to a party and someone will say to me, "Oh, I hear you're a DM. Can you tell me about your campaign?" And I will tell them like I'm talking about Thor and Loki and Odin dealing with Ragnarok. It is so real in my mind that it happens. So that is something that I've been working on for a while.
So cool.
Countless other podcasts. Come to Chicago. I'll take you around town as well. It's a lovely place.
Perfect. So go find Kellen in Chicago. His address is 349 Wood Avenue, Streetland Park.
Wood Avenue, Streetland Park. Strange naming convention here in Chicago, but it works. It's the grid system. That's the grid system for you.
So find him on the grids, and you'll be happy you did.
Yes.
This is my good friend, Kellen Terrett. Thank you so much for being on the pod today. Stick around after I push leave. And yeah, thank you so much. Any parting words before we say goodbye?
I want to say this, Rudy. I know people are not supposed to say I am proud of you because it sort of like demeans them. If there is something I could say, I am always impressed, but also at the same time not impressed with everything you do because you're incredible. You're incredibly talented. You're incredibly hardworking. You're committed. You are doing a service by helping people, by giving people a platform to listen to others. So thank you for always being so considerate of others and thinking about others and helping them. I love what you're doing as a comedian, as a personal trainer, as a human being, and as a friend.
Kellen, you are a mensch. I love you dearly.
I love you.
I'm so glad we got to talk today, and I'm so glad people might get a little of our friendly juices on them.
I hope so. Well, with consent.
They're listening. They're getting those friendly juices. That's
a good point.
That's what it's just gonna seep into their ears. Oh no, our juices seeped into your ears.
Oh no.
Well, I hope the seeping was as delightful for y'all as it was for
I hope you enjoyed this, Mike.
Have a good one, Mike.
Jokes in the gym. Jokes in the gym. Not jokes in the gym. Jokes in the gym. Jokes in the gym. With Rudy Tyburczy.